Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us on a webinar Wednesday here in QLI Studio Q. I got Brad Dexter and Stephanie Robe here with me this morning. She's a newbie to the webinar Wednesdays, which is nice to always have new folks in here. So, Brad, you're a seasoned veteran by now with these webinars, so I'm sure this audience
Something
is
like that.
going this audience is going to recognize your voice. So we're excited. We've got a new presentation for everyone this morning. The value of grit, adaptive functional fitness. Stephanie and Brad have put in a lot of time, and so we're excited to broadcast this out to everyone this morning. Just a few housekeeping things. As always, there will be a poll question. Once you receive that poll question, do answer it. That's how we gauge who we're going to be sending the CEU certificate to. So won't take up too much of your guys' time this morning. We'll jump right in. Brad, you've been here what? Since
2011.
A long time.
9 years.
9 years.
Math
yeah.
is hard.
Math is hard. That's right, especially early in the morning. So, and the coordinator of physical therapy and occupational therapy services, as well as part of the telerehab team. You've been doing, you can wear a lot of hats around here.
Yeah, telerehab has been 18 to 24 months now that we've been doing that. Kind of ramped up my role on that team as well. So
that's awesome.
Been fun.
That's awesome. And then Stephanie, I'm not even going to try. You had a long list of things that you do around here, so I'm not even going to try to. You do, yes, a lot of things, which is awesome. But been here since 2005.
Correct.
And tell us a little bit about what you do.
My official title is Director of Nutrition Services. So I'm a registered dietitian and a licensed medical nutrition therapist.
Awesome.
So really clinically involved at QLI. And then actually we just hit our 2-year mark for GRIT. So I'm the director of GRIT Adaptive Functional Fitness as well.
Well, that's very fitting because that's what we're going to be talking about today. So, well,
I guess you chose the right person.
That's right. All right. Well, I'll let you guys go ahead and launch right into it. And as always, ask questions throughout. I will be monitoring the questions on this side. So feel free to ask those and I will make sure to get them over to Brad and Stephanie if they are appropriate.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, see if we can get the slideshow to work.
Go back to it there. I'll just click on
it. Okay, there we go. So a few objectives for you guys today that we kind of want to hit as we're going through this. One, we want you to understand the secondary complications that can arise primarily due to sedentary lifestyles following neurological injury. In the title of the presentation, obviously, we're talking about adaptive functional fitness. And so, we're really talking about individuals that have had some type of neurological or catastrophic type of injury. And those are the folks that we're trying to serve with this type of program that we'll be talking about. We'll describe why adaptive fitness workouts can be a specialized and easily modifiable form of delivering fitness interventions. And then we want you guys to understand and be able to identify the benefits of in-person as well as virtual delivery platforms for accessing adaptive functional fitness programs. Most of you are familiar with QLI, and so we kind of land in the post-acute care world. So we're primarily serving individuals that have had some type of neurological catastrophic types of injury, spinal cord injury, stroke, brain injury, limb loss, chronic pain. But we also wanted to really try to impact the community in what we were doing too. So we had a lot of great facilities and assets on campus. We have some amazing people that work within our company. We were trying to figure out how do we share that? How do we allow more people from the community to access what we're trying to do? And Stephanie has had a huge role in making that happen with the GRIT Adaptive Fitness program. And so that's where the community-based care part of the spectrum really lands. So we want to start off talking today about why is fitness important in the first place. And something we know about fitness, and in this case of this presentation, adaptive fitness, is that if it's individualized and it's adapted appropriately for the folks that we're trying to serve, it can help promote a healthy lifestyle, it can help impact recovery, and it can help improve quality of life. But what happens if people don't have access to fitness? Again, after having the types of injuries that we're discussing here, people are at a higher risk for sedentary lifestyles, right? These types of injuries lead to inactivity. Um, a lot of the time, people have a hard time accessing equipment that you or I might be able to access at their local gym. It takes a lot more effort to complete activities, and it doesn't really match the return on investment. So you can imagine, and I can think over the years, a number of folks that I've heard come back to me and say, "Yeah, I went to the gym, but it was so hard. I couldn't do anything with my hands, right? I couldn't hold on to the grips." And so we've gotten better internally over the years at trying to show adaptive ways to access local fitness equipment, but really felt like it could really take the next step as well. So again, effort to complete the activities doesn't match the return on investment. It can be a learned helplessness. So I just can't do that. It just won't work for me, right? Can't tell you the number of times I've heard that. um, Lack of resources. So not only may the gym itself not be as accessible for the individual, but sometimes people run into the inability to actually transport themselves there. They may not be able to drive themselves. They may not have the finances to hire a ride service, and so that can be an issue actually getting there. And then, last thing that all of us probably have a hard time with, but habit change can be overwhelming. When you're starting something new, you're trying to learn something new, change a habit, it can be really hard. And so, and especially doing that on your own. Um, and hey, we're living in a pandemic type of world right now. Um, Isolating is kind of a thing. So doing that on your own can be really, really hard. Okay. Something else, mental health. It's a big area without fitness that can be affected after these types of injuries. Depression, we know from the research that individuals that have had a traumatic brain injury, especially spinal cord injury, um, post injury, are at a higher risk for depression and anxiety. Um, you know, Not only have they lost some of their physical ability, but it becomes an identity issue. Who they were before is challenged. Relationships break down. Support systems can break down. Um, Many of the folks that we serve were highly independent. They had a lot of control over their lives prior. And that's one of the biggest things that we try to focus on giving people back through empowering them in education in the inpatient setting. Give them control back over their lives, teach them what they need to do, teach them about their bodies and how they can take care of themselves again so they can get some of that control back. um, but time and time again, we just know transition is hard. And so when people leave campus and they go back out into the community, some of those habits that they've formed are a little harder to carry over into that real world setting. And so that's where, again, that learned helplessness can come in. Depression, anxiety can kind of creep back in as well. And as you'll hear in a little bit, why we feel like grit adaptive functional fitness is a great means for kind of filling that gap for those individuals. And then lastly on this list, secondary conditions. So these folks, many of them maybe can't walk anymore, or if they can walk, it's shorter distances. And so where does that leave them? Oftentimes they may be using a chair as their primary means of mobility. And we know that sitting does terrible things for our bodies. You look at some of the more recent research, just in general for human beings. If we're sitting, we're at a higher risk for obesity, for diabetes, for cardiovascular disease. Imagine, the folks that we're talking about in this discussion, who maybe are using a wheelchair primarily. They have a hard time getting their heart rate up when they go to a gym and they try to exercise in a cardiovascular type of manner. And so they're just going to be at a higher risk for obesity, for cardiovascular disease, for diabetes, circulatory issues, deconditioning, and then you can just see how this kind of spirals down too, and can affect poor sleep quality, hygiene, self-image, all of those. categories. So,
Brad, was that directed at me as you're standing giving this presentation and I'm sitting watching you?
Tim, it might have been a backhanded comment. Yes. No, but in all honesty, this is something, having worked with several individuals, some of them whom you'll see in this presentation later on, who are highly fit and highly active prior to their injuries. It's a real struggle for them to be able to actually exercise at the intensity that they want to be able to exercise at, and they know and they see how some of these secondary conditions are creeping into their lives. So they need to have a means to be able to access appropriately intense fitness for themselves. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Steph. She's really the brainchild behind a lot of this, and so I'm excited for you guys to hear from her. She's going to talk a little bit more about why GRIT is such a great program to kind of fit this model for fitness for the individuals that we're serving.
Sure, I will jump in. And I am a science nerd. I love science, I love studies. And so I just want to kind of fill you guys in on a couple studies that have been done recently that kind of support what Brad said about the mental health component and the secondary conditions component. So in 2010, they did a study of 156 individuals with traumatic brain injury, and they introduced them so they had a control study that did not do exercise but was on medication for depression. And then they had another group that used exercise instead of medication. And what they found was significantly reduced levels of depression at the end of 4 months. And at the end of 10 months, a lower level of severe depression relapse versus the medication control group. So in that study, they showed that being part of a fitness community was more beneficial than the medication control group. In regards to secondary conditions, there's a few studies out there. There's not a lot of great ones regarding our type of injuries and exercise, but there are some out there. There's a study that showed that the peak VO2, which is like the max consumption of oxygen for recovering traumatic brain injury patients, are 75% of just your typical sedentary individual. So that just kind of shows you, again, the impact of having a sedentary lifestyle on someone with a traumatic brain injury.
So in other words, like just really deconditioned easily, right? Body's not going to function very efficiently.
Right. Not even as well as just a general population sedentary individual. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And then another study showed that TBI survivors are 3 times more likely to die 1 year post-injury from circulatory conditions. So that obviously is a cause for concern and a reason why we really are pushing physical activity. On the slide that you guys have up now, so our program is called GRIT, which stands for Guts, Resilience, Intensity, and Tenacity. And what adaptive functional fitness is really focusing on training your muscles to work together and prepare them for daily tasks by simulating common movements. So to break that down a little bit more, it's just really teaching your body how to best use what it has in the space that it's given. That's the whole purpose behind functional fitness. So what we do at QLI is we incorporate our rehab principles and we relate them directly to the demands of the real world. So really, it made so much sense to start this program as part of QLI because we recognized that when individuals left our doors, that there was this need to stay connected. Maybe their support systems weren't the best. Maybe they didn't know where to go, where their resources were. So people tend to stay pretty connected to QLI afterwards. And for those that don't, sometimes they reach back out saying, hey, I'm really struggling and I need some help. And so what a perfect opportunity for us to get involved by starting a program that promotes health and wellness for individuals out in our community. On to the next. So what is the ideal athlete? So there's some stuff listed up here regarding some physical impairments, cognitive deficits, other complex neurological and orthopedic conditions. But I will tell you, basically, the ideal athlete is anyone who needs adaptive fitness. So anyone who would struggle going into a community gym and figuring out how to adapt that equipment to work best for them is the ideal athlete for Grit. So that is our only qualifier when we have people apply to the program, is we just ask them, you know, what is your injury? What are your deficits? What are your goals? What do you struggle with? And if they can meet the criteria basically of just not knowing how to adapt the workouts, they're welcome in our gym. So our ideal athlete is any adaptive athlete, basically. We've had quite a variety in our gym. We've had spinal cord injury, we've had traumatic brain injury, we've had MS, we've had Parkinson's, limb loss, Guillain-Barré, West Nile, a little bit of everything in there, some chronic pain. So we've really been able to show our community and ourselves that we're able to serve quite a diverse population. So some scientific guidelines. This one is basically off spinal cord injury, and I want to focus on the top part of the cardiorespiratory fitness and muscle strength benefits. So what they show is 20 minutes of aerobic exercise at a moderate to vigorous activity 2 times a week, and 3 sets of strength training at a moderate to vigorous intensity 2 times a week. So that's where Grit falls. Grit falls in that category. So our athletes come to our gym 2 times per week if they're participating in our in-person classes, which again, with adaptive functional fitness, that's all worked into those workouts. So they're getting strength training and they're getting aerobic exercise during those sessions. You know, the general population, they say 75 minutes vigorous weekly. So again, we're kind of falling into that. I looked up traumatic brain injury. It's hard because there's not a whole lot out there, but for the most part, what you find is 2 to 3 times a week weight training, and cardio 3 to 5 times a week weight training. And what some of our folks do is they come and do these really intense workouts a couple times a week, and then they may go for walks, jump on a recumbent bike, get their cardio, their aerobic exercise in other ways outside of these classes. So we also can be a good add-in to a more moderate intensity activity. So a little bit about intensity. You know, a functional fitness is considered an intense activity. It's the workouts are they are of, I don't know how to describe them exactly. They are intense.
Let's just say when a lot of people see me after they've done it, they're like, they just kicked my butt today. Yeah.
That's kind of what they're like. I'm kind of at a loss for words, but it's a really well-rounded activity. So we're working pretty much every part of that human's body that we can work. The sessions are they're an hour long. Within that hour, it's anywhere from usually about 20 to 40 minutes is the actual activity, because it kind of depends on what we're doing. So some are fast and hard and they're out in 20 minutes. And then sometimes we're really focused, not on speed, but on duration. And so they're longer activities. So that's kind of how those workouts go. We are looking to impact strength and endurance. So we want people leaving there not just stronger, but also feeling like, wow, I can do so much more. I don't tire out as quickly. I've got a lot more energy. It facilitates motor learning, which I'll get into. Of course, I have my studies. So I'll get into those a little bit too. But we also adjust them based off the individual. So even though we're saying, wow, these workouts are really intense, we also get to know our athletes well. So we adjust them based off of where they are at. We like to push them, but we also have very open communication about what feels good, what doesn't feel good. The athletes, if they can be, are really involved in deciding what weight are you feeling like today? Let's pull out 2 different ones. Let's see how they feel. So we take time before the workouts to do some run-throughs to see what feels right for that individual. So they're intense based off what the athlete is able to do. Our class sizes are really small, and that is intentional. So we like to think of the classes more like personal training sessions versus going to a gym class. We have one head trainer who is a level 3. She's a level 3 CrossFit instructor and a certified adaptive instructor. So she's incredibly knowledgeable. And then we have assistants in the room who are generally either QLI staff, so they're rehab trainers who are very knowledgeable about the background of the individuals we serve, or they are like OT or PT students that are coming in and volunteering their time. So typically we'll have 2 to 3 coach assistants in the room, as well as Addie, a head coach. And then we might have anywhere from 2 to 3 to 5 to 6 athletes. So our goal, depending on the complexity of the athletes we're working with, is never more than 2 athletes per coach. We like to keep it to 1 athlete per coach if possible, but we do have some groups, some of our SCI groups who are a lot more independent after setup, where we can increase that class size a little bit. As far as studies, there are a couple out there that I wanted to share with you guys, just so you have some information to back up what we're talking about. One of them showed that, so there's this protein called BDNF, and basically it supports existing neurons and also helps with neurogenesis. And they have actually shown, and this is just in the general population, that that is stimulated by exercise. So obviously that's also a very good thing for the population we're talking about. In a 2017 study in biological psychology, they showed that cardiovascular exercise leads to positive change in the areas of the brain that are responsible for motor control. And then another study showed, this one was with young stroke patients, that there is an increase in motor learning after an 8-week high-intensity training program versus a stretching program. So again, we would fall into that high-intensity training program. There's another one I want to share with you. Brad had talked about just access and knowledge. So whether it's the gym is very overwhelming to me, I can't go to a community gym and find a trainer that truly understands what I need. There's some studies that they did and some surveys that they did on that. One was from the American College of Sports Medicine, and then also done with the American Heart Association, that showed that unsupervised fitness programs can result in inadequate duration and intensity to meet the desired benefits. So when Brad was talking about the return on investment, that kind of falls into that category of, yeah, I can go, but I really don't know what I'm doing and I don't know how to adapt it. So now I'm not getting the benefit that I want from it. And we help people navigate that. A survey of spinal cord injury clients, they kind of surveyed them about exercise programs and why they don't participate in exercise programs. And one of their biggest, I don't know if I want to call it a complaint, but one of the biggest things they said was that they felt that health professionals did not provide sufficient support and recommendations for exercise once they are home. So they just didn't feel like they had the guidance to do an exercise or program that they felt was beneficial to them.
I'm thinking about intensity back along the lines of, motor learning too. And, we've been talking about like finding that sweet spot when it comes to teaching someone something new, right? And if we let people, I'm speaking from a PT's view right now, but if we let people be too comfortable in how we're training them to do things, whether that's walking again or learning how to stand up from the edge of a mat, or lifting weights in our gym, if we're letting them be too comfortable, we're doing them a disservice, right? If they live in that comfort zone, they're not going to get better right there. We also can't push them like too far either, right? We can't push them over the edge of the cliff because that could be a little bit detrimental. And we may not help them learn that way. And so we really have to walk that line and find the sweet spot. And I think Grit does a really nice job of that. I think, speaking for my profession, sometimes I think we treat the neurological population and some of the folks that we've been discussing in this presentation as if they're breakable almost. And certainly they have medical conditions that need to be taken into account, but it's our job from a skilled standpoint to look at them and to understand, how far can I push them? How intense can I make this? Because it needs to be appropriate. I can't make it too easy. And so I love having those conversations with other people in my profession too, and being able to, just discuss, how do we challenge the people that we're serving even more? How do we recommend appropriate intensity? And again, I love what is happening in Grit, because I think it really does encompass that thought and that vision.
Well, thanks, Brad. So a little bit about the fitness community and why I think we're able to do what we do is the first thing is the camaraderie and competition. So again, you're entering this community that is encouraging, that is pushing you. You have people cheering you on. And I think the reason we are able to push people a little beyond their comfort zone is because we have that camaraderie, because you have your fellow athlete cheering you on, because you have a coach that's knowledgeable and is able to come up with an exercise that works well for you and feels good and makes you feel like you are truly getting something from it. And that's hard to find. And so that's one reason we're able to do that. I talked some about the coaches, with Coach Addie being our head coach. Physical therapy, lucky for us, is right here. So if there is something that we are struggling at figuring out, I know we've had an athlete who, when we were doing mat work, so like groundwork, and then getting up on the boxes, we were having a little trouble with just kind of figuring out that transfer of getting him off the floor. And we needed just a couple extra eyes to help us figure out what would be the best thing. And we could pull in, I think we pulled you in, Brad, for that, just to come on over quick and kind of guide us through it to make sure that it's looking good for what we're doing. So in the occasion that we do run into something like that, we have additional experts here, which is fantastic. And then we talked about the small group format, the reason why we keep those classes so small, why we consider more of a personal training session. One thing I didn't mention, I mentioned that the classes are an hour and that typically the workouts are anywhere from 20 to 40 minutes. In that additional time, of course, they're doing some stretching and some warming up and going through those exercises. So Addie actually takes them through the workout. So what is the workout of the day? What are those movements? And what does each athlete need to get through those movements? So it's not like there's just equipment out there and she goes through it and somebody grabs something and we figure it out. Every athlete is laid out with the equipment that they're going to need for that workout before the timer starts, so that they are ready to go and they feel comfortable with what they're doing once that timer starts. Because we do time our workouts. That's part of it. And we do some keeping of basically, there's a scoring way of doing things. And so we also keep track of everybody's scores after workouts, because we like to show them, hey, we did this workout 6 weeks ago. We're doing it again. Let's compare your scores. One thing, Bob, one of our athletes, that he said he really likes is he loves the scorekeeping. He wants to know everything about what he did. But what's beautiful about it is they're not competing against each other. They're competing against themselves. So they are just interested in what their score was and how they can make that better. And then they cheer on their fellow athletes to do the same. So it's not where it can be in some other gyms of, hey, how'd you do? Haha, I did 10 seconds better than that. These athletes don't have that. It's just more of a, let me do my best and I'm going to cheer you on to do your best, which is a super cool thing. Just a quick story of one of our athletes who was really struggling with being home. And he did not have a vehicle yet to get back and forth, and was struggling, was having some medical complications from being at home, was having some mental health issues from being stuck at home, and was able to find Grit. And it just, the amount of support that he received there, so whether it be just opening up to his fellow athletes, letting them know what he was going through, some of them had been through similar things. So doing that story sharing, how deconditioned he was by being home for 3 to 4 months. So just getting himself conditioned again. He's told us, and I think it might even be on one of the slides, but that basically Grit for him, he truly believes that QLI and Grit saved his life. Because when you are secluded, so when you are, have, an injury where you're not able to just freely move about as you would wish, depression is a very real thing. Seclusion is a real thing. And so it's when you get connected to a community, it can be a real blessing in someone's life.
Yeah, I'm thinking about that same individual, and I think he had a couple good months after he went home from rehab and was transitioning well, and then things just kind of went awry. And I love what you said about just getting connected to people again, because it was hard for him to be connected with his situation there, and getting connected with people around something that he loved was truly impactful for him.
Yeah, for sure. So about our approach, we are practical application related to the demands of the real world, which I think was in the first slide. So again, how to best use your body in the space that it's provided. We're well-rounded functional workouts. So the whole point of functional fitness is you're not kind of separating individual muscle groups to work them out. You're trying to work as much of your body into a movement as you can, because we like to work on flexibility, we like to work on strength, we like to work on balance. So all of those types of things are worked into the workout of the day. There's a lot of variety. So we do like similar movements, but they're different, but they're working the same muscle groups or they're working the same body parts. But people don't get tired. So it's not like sometimes when you go to the gym and you're like, oh, what am I going to do today? I'm going to jump on this piece of equipment, or I'm going to go, it's back day, so I'm going to do this. We're just constantly bringing new stuff in. Metrics to track practice. Again, so we kind of keep track of what everyone's progress is in the workouts. Addie writes it all down and keeps track of it, so they can check in and see if they've seen improvements. And then we can complement formal therapies versus standalone. So some people just do grit twice a week. Some people do grit with their own kind of physical activity on the side. And we have some folks that do formal physical therapy sessions and then also come and join us for grit.
So you were talking about just the practical application related to the demands of the real world. Can you talk a little bit maybe about some specific examples that you've seen from people that are using grit? Like, how has it changed what they're doing on a day-to-day basis?
Sure. I think that what I hear from a lot of especially our SCI folks, is their comfort in knowing that if they were to fall out of their chair, that they know now they have the strength and they understand their body better and how to maneuver out of that situation. So how do they get themselves up off the floor? Which is a huge thing, right? I mean, we had a gentleman who has an elevator in his home, and he was, I can't remember if he was loading or unloading into the elevator, and it started to move without him pushing the button, and it tipped his chair forward. And that was right when he started grit. And he was a little banged up, and he talked about how he was laying on the floor for a while because he couldn't get himself to where he needed to go, and nobody could hear him. And then we were about 4 months into our workouts, and he had another situation where he had kind of gotten out of his chair, not because of the elevator, but had talked about, oh my God, like what I was able to do in that circumstance. I wish I would have had that back when I had that really scary ordeal, because it would have really helped me and I wouldn't have been as scared. So, I mean, there's all kinds of stories like that of people just talking about how they're more confident in themselves. They understand their bodies better, how their bodies move better, and they're stronger. And so, I mean, and that's exactly what we're going for.
That's a great example.
So another thing that's great about adaptive functional fitness is with functional fitness, you require minimal equipment. So we don't have a lot of machinery. There's not a lot of fancy stuff in our gym. You're kind of looking at free weights, bars, squat racks. We do have a couple pieces of cardio equipment like row machines and ski ergs, but for the most part, it's just really simple gym equipment. So those kind of things can be really easily modified for our athletes if you have the knowledge on how to do it. Because we want to promote proper technique and high energy output. So the last thing we ever want is to put one of our athletes in a situation where they feel uncomfortable or unsafe. So we work really hard to ensure that whatever piece of equipment we are using, that athlete knows how to use the proper technique with it, so they remain safe. So what's been great about going into the teleworld is that because functional fitness requires minimal equipment, we were able to transfer that over to tele pretty easily, because we were able to look at, okay, this is what we're using in our gym sessions. Here are some things you could find at home that could easily be put in place if you don't have free weights, if you don't have a slam ball. Like, there's all kinds of things that you could use at home. And again, that just means just getting creative, thinking outside the box, being knowledgeable of your craft. And so this type of workouts just works really well for what we're trying to do.
So Steph just started talking about kind of that teleworld too. And, obviously when pandemic hit mid-March, whenever that was now, all of a sudden, we kind of had to close down our campus. So some of these folks that were coming on to campus to come to Grit, all of a sudden they couldn't come do that anymore. And so thankfully, like you said, it was really easy to transition a lot of this into a virtual environment. Steph already hit on, one, you still have access to Addie as a coach. So she's there. That's phenomenal. The workouts can still be very challenging, even with equipment that they have around their home for themselves. I'm actually working with a couple of those individuals, doing tele-rehab with them from their homes as well. And I'll ask them, hey, how's your Grit program going? Oh man, Addie just kicked my butt today. I didn't think it could be this hard from home with the stuff that I have, but it's just as hard here as it is there. I miss the people. I still see them over video, but I feel like the intensity is still just like it was. And so I think that's kind of magical that, Addie's been able to do that as a coach. And it's worked really well over a virtual platform. The other thing, I'm thinking about working on the tele-rehab side of things at QLI here too is, we've started serving people from all over the country with our tele-rehab program. And we've had a few individuals that they need some supplemental fitness. They need fitness in their lives because we see how it's going to help with what we're doing for PT or for OT with them in that tele-rehab environment. And so we've had a few folks that have started using GritFit from other areas of the country, connections through the tele-rehab program. And it's been a great melding to serve those individuals. So it's been awesome.
Yeah, it's been fun to watch it. When we started doing the virtual classes, there's always this unknown of, okay, how exactly is this going to go to get the quality that we want? So a lot of gyms are doing virtual classes right now. They're usually pretty big class sizes, and there's not a personal touch, right? So you just jump into the class and you just start doing the workout. Whereas with ours, we've really been mindful to ensure that Addie can still view each athlete and give in the moment feedback coaching to every single athlete that's on that call. That's really important to her too, that she is making sure they're all getting individualized attention. So just part of it is because she's so darn knowledgeable. She's so good. But we've been able to successfully have quite a few athletes on a call. And Addie's been able to maneuver and watch them all and give guidance and direction. It's also fun to watch the banter between all the athletes on there. They're still cheering each other on.
So the community is still there.
The community's still there. We've had athletes who could possibly access a community gym where they are living now, and they have chosen to stay on with the virtual classes through Grit just because of the expertise and because of the community, that's a big deal to me, that they do have options, some of them, and they have chosen to stay with us. So that, I think, has been a good compliment to the program and to Addie.
That's great. Well, we want to show you guys a little bit of this in practice. And so give us a short moment here. We'll get our video shared with you. All
There we
right. And that was it. It's over. No.
go. Wasn't that great?
Okay. So,
Okay.
Steph, let me hand this to you.
Okay.
And we'll go ahead and play this.
Okay. We're going to take you through some movements. So the first thing I want to show you is a burpee, and these all are pretty usual movements within the functional fitness community. So Addie was showing you a burpee. It's a full body movement. It's great for body weight conditioning. So instead of using equipment, you're using your own body weight for strengthening. It's also good for flexibility and coordination. So that's a really good functional fitness exercise. Now what we're going to show you is Jeremy doing a couple adaptations. Jeremy has a traumatic brain injury. So he's showing you a similar movement with the walkout of the arms and the legs. So that is where Jeremy started. And that was very, very difficult for him to do because of his balance and coordination. So he shows you that one. And now he's going to show you what he progressed to, which is still an adaptation because it's not completely lowering himself to the ground like Addie would and then getting up off the ground. But it was still a good variation of a burpee for someone who has better coordination strength. Now we're looking at spinal cord injury. Obviously, the burpee is going to be a little bit more challenging in that type of environment. And so if you have someone who we can't get on the mat to do some form of exercise, these are called U-turns. So again, you're having to practice coordination. You're having to work on some balance. Another variation is what we call mat hops, curb hops, plate hops, whatever you might want to call them, which is, again, a similar thing. It's about coordination. It's about pacing. And it's about upper body strength. And so that is another variation for someone with an SCI for doing the burpee. Now we're going to show you Chad. And Chad is one of our athletes who's at home, and he's doing a variation of a burpee from his chair. And now he's going to show you another variation that an SCI can do from home. Is he just has a heavy pillow that he uses, and he is going to perform what would be equivalent to like a ball slam. So like in the gym, we have 4 pound, 6 pound, 8 pound balls. So he just uses that to do the ball slams. Next is the pull up. So Addie is going to show you a traditional pull up that is common in functional fitness along with a Kipling pull up. So again, you're looking at wanting to strengthen the upper body, really work on grip strength, and it really focuses on shoulder health. So we had a discussion earlier in this room about how many of us actually can do a successful pull-up because they are difficult to do.
That's what we should have made for the poll question.
How many of you guys can do a pull-up?
Right.
So now Jeremy is showing you a variation of just the leg swings, which again, he's having to work on shoulder health and grip strength. Addie's showing you a version of a seated one. So a lot of our SCI guys can pull themselves up through that seated variation. And then we have Cole. Cole has some shoulder pain, back pain. And so we aren't quite at where he can hold onto the bars and pull himself up to a pull-up. So instead we use the bands to mimic that motion of a pull-up.
Can I pause you
Yep.
right there? Because I don't know that we hit on this earlier in the presentation, but you just brought up that he was dealing with a lot of pain issues. And I think for chronic pain, we know that aerobic exercise is really, really beneficial for chronic pain. If you can get people to be active, you improve oxygenation in some of those tissues that aren't really being oxygenated all that well and is causing some chronic pain issues, right? In his case, this gentleman's case, I think this was incredibly beneficial for some of the pain issues that he had going on as well. And it supplemented, as he was inpatient, it supplemented what he was doing on the inpatient side of things really, really well. So I realize that's an aside, but I wanted to point that out since we didn't really hit on something like that earlier.
You know, and that's just, again, with Addie working with him to figure out, this is the movement, ideal movement we're looking at. Here are some different variations. Let's practice them. Let's see what feels good, and let's land on something.
And it's not just that he's gaining strength from that. It's one, that it feels good. Two, he feels supported really, really well. And he starts to feel good about himself, too, and what he's doing.
Yeah. I mean, it's been, for this individual, it's been really fun to watch because, you know, he come into the gym and pretty quiet. Confidence was pretty low. And it's been really fun to watch him blossom from, no, I'm not really comfortable with anybody watching me, to, yeah, go ahead, record me.
Yeah.
Let's do this. I want to show what I can do. So, again, it's been fun to watch him on that perspective as well.
Yep.
So here's Chad doing a variation of a pull-up from home. So he has some light dumbbells that he can do with. So that was an easy variation. This is what we call a power snatch. So it's a full body movement, flexibility, balance, strength, coordination, all of that. It's a very fast lift. So it's really focusing on dynamic movement, big range of motion. So those are the goals of the snatch. So then you have Jeremy doing a variation of it. So not going all the way to the ground and not as quick of a movement because of his balance and coordination, but he still be able to get the core exercise. So he's still able to get out of it what we're looking for. And here's another variation, seated. So again, maybe not quite the speed, but still getting the core movement. And then here you have it doing with dumbbells at home. So a lot of people don't have a bar at home, so we're able to come up with different kinds that we can do. And here's another variation of the movement with the swing with both weights overhead. This one is a clean and jerk. This one's considered a power lift. So we're really looking at a greater load, lots of strength, a lot of power through. And so here is the movement with dumbbells in the gym. Again, not as much full body movement because of the strength and balance. Here's the seated variation again with the hand weights. Seated, it's usually easier to do with the hand weights than a bar. And then here's another one at home. So he happened to have a piece of wood that worked really well for him instead of a bar to do that, again, that exact same movement with an adaptation from something at home. So hopefully that gave you guys a good idea of like, here's a traditional movement in a functional fitness gym. Here's how we would modify for someone with TBI, possibly has like balance and coordination issues. Here's how we would adapt in the gym for someone with an SCI, and here's how we adapt at home. So hopefully you guys got a good picture of the different layers of those workouts.
We did have somebody just ask, how much weight do you typically start with? Is that something that's customizable for,
Yeah, it's very customizable. So, I would say that we started our gym, when we started our gym, we primarily bought 3-pound weights, 5-pound weights. I think the heaviest we got was about a 10-pound weight and a 15-pound bar. Some of our athletes have been with us for about a year and a half. And so we've had to invest in 30-pound hand weights, 30-pound bars with more plates. So yeah, we have quite a diverse selection, and a big part of that is we've been driven to because our athletes have made gains, and so we've had to invest in bigger, badder equipment.
That's awesome.
Absolutely. Well, just winding things down here for you guys. The next few slides that we have are really just testimonials from individuals that have done this. And Steph and I wanted to just share some quick stories on each of them, kind of looking at that flow from inpatient rehab into community-based. And Tim is going to act as each individual, so you'll get to hear his voice. But he'll read these quotes for us, and then Steph and I will just share a little bit of information about each one of these folks too.
All right, so it's going to read a few quotes here. So 1 year after my spinal cord injury, I was able to do my first sit-up. I've also tripled my overhead press and added an extra 20 pounds to my chair dips. Virtual services are great to stay fit too.
So this is a young gentleman. He actually came to us from the West Coast, where he was living and got hurt. He didn't have a lot of community, not a lot of support systems. Had a rough childhood, had a spinal cord injury from, he was a painter and he had a fall while he was painting on the job. And when he came, he was like a C5 level injury. He was able to do some of his own transfers. Highly, highly competitive young man. And so he was always competing against himself during rehab. He was trying to figure out, how fast can I make my car transfer? How fast can I break down my wheelchair? How quickly can I get in and out of bed? How long is it going to take me to do my morning routine and my evening routine? I want to get back to normal life. And so I think when he had the opportunity to transition to grit, he probably took that same attitude over. And I'll tell you, he's continued his rehab journey beyond what he did in inpatient, really through participating in Grit.
Yeah, he's been a really fun one to watch for me. And what's also really rewarding is he recognizes the gains. Sometimes it's hard when they're in smaller increments, but he really recognizes it. But he started out, you see right now, he has a that's I believe a 25-pound bar with just some weights on it. But he started out with a PVC pipe. So literally you're looking at a couple pounds, and we used to have to get like gloves on so he could grip the bar. So that's where we started. And now he's weighted bars with weights on it. He loves sled poles. I think his max sled pole was almost 400 pounds. So he was pretty happy with that. We just had to do some modifications to the rope to pull the sled. His sit up, I have that on video. That was pretty amazing to watch. And it's not like he got a bunch of core strength back or anything like that, or it's just that he was able to understand how he needed to move his body to get himself to do a sit up.
Absolutely.
So that was a really, he's pretty impressive.
He's also a Comp Laud award winner.
Yeah, nice.
He got to go out to San Diego a couple years back and accept his award.
Yeah.
So he's an incredible person. All right. I joined Grit 3 months ago and already have more energy, feel stronger, and sleep better. I feel accomplished. The online classes provide a sense of community and accountability that works for me.
So the thing that sticks out to me about this woman here is she's around, I think, 25 years post-injury. She had her spinal cord injury when she was in high school in the mid-90s. And so she's been living with a spinal cord injury for a long time. In fact, she's influencing our community and advocating on behalf of individuals that have had a spinal cord injury. She looks at accessibility in a number of environments around our community and calls for change. We had the opportunity to have her come onto campus and to learn a little bit more, not just about QLI, but about our Grit program. And she jumped on board with it, and it's been a phenomenal addition for her.
Yeah, it's been great to see her in the classes. She joined shortly before we went into this months off from COVID, and now she shows up easily 3 to 5 days a week for the virtual classes. And she's been fun because she had tried other gyms in the community. She had tried another adaptive gym in the community and always felt okay about it, but was never super excited. And it's been rewarding for me because she's posted twice on her advocacy website about Grit Gym, because she feels like it is such an excellent program for SCI folks in our community that she wants to spread the word. So that's been nice.
Absolutely.
The workouts push recovery beyond what I experience exercising on my own, and virtual services offer the convenience of joining classes from home. 9 months ago, I parked my wheelchair in the garage and haven't used it since.
I think all of these stories have this theme to me, but it's the theme of the story isn't over yet. And I think what many of the individuals that we serve here is that, 18 months to 24 months, that's about the amount of recovery that you're going to have. And it kind of stops at that point. We're all about creating hope, not false hope, but creating hope. And I think if you look at a graph with an x-axis and a y-axis, where the x-axis is time and the y-axis is the amount of recovery that you have, you're going to see a lot of recovery in the first 18-ish months, right? But what we fail to look at a lot of the time is what happens after 2 years. What happens beyond that? And if you're challenging yourself and you have the right amount of intensity, your body can continue to change. It doesn't mean it's going to fully recover, but it can keep changing. Here's a gentleman that when he left rehab, he could walk a little bit around his home. He's just continued to push himself a ton, and Grit has been instrumental in continuing to improve his recovery and his access into life.
Yeah, he's worked really hard for this. I would say he would say that he needs the community. I think there was even a ways past injury, just this true heavy sense of loss. And sometimes we're in the gym and he still just wants to give up because it's hard work. But he shows up every day because he knows that he has a group of folks in there that are down on the ground with him, cheering him on every movement that he makes. So the physical's been great, but for him, I think the emotional connectivity has been impressive.
All right. Grit's unique format and expert trainers make a once unreachable exercise accessible and fun. It has been instrumental in pushing me to achieve my goals and set new ones.
So this is an individual that has Guillain-Barré, and it was one of the worst types of Guillain-Barré, and his recovery has been very slow. But if you know anything about Guillain-Barré, there is quite a bit of recovery that happens within the peripheral nervous system. It just takes a long time, and it has to have the appropriate amount of intensity and the appropriate timing to help it improve. I've had the opportunity of working with this gentleman for quite a while now, and the thing that's sticking out to me is the person on the last slide actually lives a couple blocks down the street from him. And I just learned recently that they've made a pact with one another that as soon as the previous individual, Kent, as soon as he's able to walk a little bit longer distance, they're going to walk down to Bob's house together. They've set that goal, and I want to get video of that. It would be monumental for them. But both of them have just set targets and goals down the line, and they keep achieving them. They keep fighting for them. So
two stories from Bob real quick that I've really appreciated, that brought a little tear to my eye anyway. One of them was when he was recovering and going to his doctor, and they would measure his recovery in millimeters and his nerves. And even though it's a really slow recovery, his doctor said, "What are you doing? Because I'm really impressed with your progress." And the physician said, "I really think it's because of how you're pushing yourself physically that you are getting the return like this," which made me happy, because it's like, oh, there's the science behind it, right?
Yep.
Another great story for Bob is when he started, we say, what are your goals? What are your desires? What do you want to do? And he said, I have a lake place, and I really would love to get back on my boat, but I think at this point we're going to have to sell the boat, because I don't see myself being able to drive it. I don't see myself being able to get on it successfully. And then you get to I don't even remember how many months in we were, and he came in just grinning ear to ear.
He got on the boat.
Yep. And he could drive the boat.
Yep.
So that was like goal check, right? And so then you move on to the next. Sure. Because he did it, and he really, really honestly thought in his heart that he'd have to sell it. And so again, these gyms aren't just about strength training. There's about so much more. And that's why we're here.
All right. I'm going to go ahead and launch the poll question here. So that is now on the screen. Again, just a quick reminder, that is for anyone wanting to receive your CEU certificate for this. I do want to just throw something out there. So typically we send you an evaluation really shortly after this. We have applied for CEU for CCMCs for this, as always. And we do expect that it is going to be approved by the end of this week. So there is going to be a delay in getting the follow-up email sent out to you guys after this. So please give us a little bit of a grace period there. I know we love getting everything sent out to you guys right after, but we just want to make sure that we'll let you guys know. But our expectation is that it will be approved by the end of this week, and early next week you should receive at the latest your follow-up emails from us. Okay, we've actually had a few questions, guys. There's a few people asking about cost. Please feel free to reach out to either Brad or Stephanie on that. Their emails are up on the screen right now. So if you are concerned about the cost, reach out to Brad and Stephanie, and they can either get you directed to the correct person to answer that, or themselves can answer it. So we did have someone ask, what is the typical length of time an individual participates? And are you seeing work comp patients, or who's all paying for this?
Sure, I can take that. The duration of participation is variable. So if someone is coming to us from the community, we don't make them commit, but we ask for a 3-month commitment, just because we feel like that's what's needed to truly understand the gains that they're making. You're not going to see much in 3 to 4 weeks. They really need to commit to the process to understand what it's doing for them. We also serve folks who are at QLI, so they attend Grit Gym in addition to their rehab, and those people might be shorter. It just depends on their length of stay. But most community folks are in it for at least 3 months. I would tell you that most of our athletes, once they start, they don't stop. So the biggest percentage of our athletes have been with us for a year or longer. As far as, what was the second part of the question? Sorry.
Just kind of who's paying for it. Is
Oh.
it people? Is it a private pay? Is it work comp? Are you seeing kind of a mixed payer source across the board?
Yep, it's
Okay.
a mixed payer source. So we have individuals, I'd say the majority are either private paying or workers' comp as
Okay.
our two biggest
Mhm.
funding sources right now.
Okay. We had someone ask, are we currently open with COVID going on? Are we currently accepting outpatient, new grit athletes?
Yep, and that's where we'll reaching out later will be helpful, because we are not doing in gym, like in person classes right now, except for people who are in our facility already. So if we have somebody who's already a QLI client on campus, they can continue to do the live classes. But for everybody else, we are doing virtual classes. It's a unique situation right now because of COVID. We just wanted to provide a service of value. So we're kind of in a unique spot right now, but we do intend on broadening our offering of the virtual classes. So that will be something to come. So if you want to specifically reach out and give me your name and your contact information, and then I can make sure that gets to the people who need it, who are more involved with the teleservices part of this.
And then there are a few folks just referencing that they didn't see the poll. If you didn't see it, please email us directly, qliwebinars@qliomaha.com. The question was just, fitness is hard to access for individuals with catastrophic injuries, true or false? So just send us true or false, so that lets us know that you are wanting the CEU certificate. Again, that's qliwebinars@qliomaha.com. All right. I think that's it, guys.
Thank you all
Thank
for
you, guys.
tolerating my
Yeah,
first
that's it.
webinar.
Yes, studio, it's first time. I like
Yeah.
it. As always, please check us out on social media, our website. We love sharing stories, and so we hope that you find this information valuable and educational, and we hope that you join us for future webinars. We do have another one coming up July 22nd. That will be CBT with Dr. Jeff Snell. I'm sure you guys have all, if you've been attending our webinars in the past, that's going to be a familiar voice and face for you guys. So that's it. Look forward to having you join us then, and we hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Thanks, guys.